My name is Lindsay Miles. I am one of the graphic design students at EOS Marketing. I'm a senior in graphic design at Arizona State. And today I'm going to be showing you how to apply design principles with ASUs Brand in order to make a social media post through InDesign. So the first thing I just want to show is if you don't know ASU's Brand, you can easily access it on brandguide.asu.edu. It basically gives you all the information about ASU's Brand, including the fonts, the logos, the color palette. And the reason that we want to stick to this as much as possible is just to make sure that ASU's Brand is consistent and recognizable across all platforms, no matter what you post. So the first thing I'm going to walk you through is going to be our social media post. So this is what we are aiming to do today. It is just a basic made up social media post just about COVID-19 that we're in this together. I'm using InDesign to make this social media post. InDesign is usually going to be best for things with a lot of text or photography. You don't really want to use Photoshop for a lot of text or Illustrator. InDesign is just going to be the best just because it runs fast enough and it's just best with overall text and photography. So when I first get a project like this, the main thing that I'm given is just the content of what needs to be on the project. So let's say the client says, we want a social media post that just says we're in this together and information about how they can find out things about COVID-19 and coming back on campus. So that's kind of the only thing that we know and that they want a picture as well. So I really like to organize my material in my InDesign file with everything that I know needs to be on the post. So for the photo, you're going to go to the left-hand side and there's this rectangle frame tool. And you're just going to draw, honestly, any size rectangle. We can always fix it later. And you're going to press Command D, and it's going to pull up like your desktop of what you want to put in. And I'm going to click the picture that I wanted. And right now, it's a little too zoomed in. So if you just double click it, I go to fitting and then I fit content proportionately. So it's basically fitting the content to the size of the frame that I made. And as you can see, it's a little too tall on the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click again, fitting, and then I'm going to fit my frame to the content. So this way I know that the picture's not distorted at all. It shrunk it down to scale, and that's how I would enter in my photo. And something a little annoying about InDesign that I found when I first started using it is you would think that you could just grab this side corner and make it bigger, but it doesn't. It's just going to make it this extra frame bigger and not your photo. So you can either go two ways about this. You can double click fitting and fit content proportionally again, and it'll just scale it up. That can get annoying sometimes. So I like to click it, and there's this free transform tool that's on the left. And you have to make sure you're holding down Shift while using this, or else it'll distort your image. Hold down Shift, and it's going to make it the size that you want. And you can just go however big or small you want. But if I didn't press Shift down, I could do something like this and it would just mess it up. So that would be how I would go about putting the picture in. For the swatches on the side, all I did was make little squares with my rectangle tool. And so if you just want to make a square with the rectangle tool, again, you're just going to hold Shift down so it keeps the shape of a square. And I referred back to the ASU brand guide for this. So I was on my laptop doing this and then made my squares, went to the ASU brand guides. What they're gonna have, here I'll show you, are hex codes. That's what it's called for your colors. Hopefully it didn't log me out. Okay, so right here we have our basic maroon and gold. And these are gonna be the hex codes that you're gonna enter in, and I'll show you how to enter them in. So let's enter the gold one in. So I'm gonna copy this, Control C, and I'll stop share so you guys can see the InDesign. And I have my box highlighted, and over here on the left is going to be my color for the box. So right now it's telling me there's no color inside the box, and there's also no color on the border of the box. So I don't want to color the border, I just want the inside. I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to enter in my hex code, and it's going to do it. The problem I don't like about the hex codes is sometimes they translate wrong. So you'll see here, and these are just little things that you just get used to. It says 02293 0, even though we put in the correct hex code. But if you go to the ASU brand guide, you'll notice that these 4 numbers are different than what it was saying. So even though it's kind of annoying to remember them, I would recommend writing them down and entering in the numbers instead of these codes. So like, since I've done this a couple times, I've just memorized the gold color. So it's 02288 0. And it doesn't look different, but when it's printed and if you were to compare the two, it would be different. So it's really important that you're sticking to those 4 numbers instead of the code, because sometimes it can just get messed up. So I just went through and did that with each color that I was most likely going to use. So we know that an ASU logo needs to be on the post, and the content, and the photo. So I guess my first step would be to find out where on the post we can put this photo. And for this post, we're making it an Instagram post. So it's a square, it's 15 by 15 inches. Those are all things you can set up in the beginning. If you have questions on how to set it up, I can let you know as well. But we're just gonna start by moving around our picture and just finding places that it looks best. So I'm using my selection tool up here on the left, and I'm just moving it around, trying to find places that I think it works best. And for right now, I'm just going to put it at the top. And if you haven't used InDesign before, a good way to tell how your information is going to look once it's printed or done is putting it in preview mode, which I do a lot, and that's just by pressing W. So pressing W makes you see everything when it's cut off and done, and it's a very helpful tool in the end to just see how it's going to look. And if you want to get out of preview mode, you just press W again. So right now I have my picture, and I think it looks pretty good there. And I know that the "we're in this together" is going to be almost the title and the main point of this social media post. So I want that to be the first text we're going to see. So for right now, I'm not going to mess with the type size. I'm just going to put it right at the top right here, just so I know. And I have the rest of my information that I'm just going to put underneath. This is the ASU text that we use. It's "Accidents Grotesque." This is in bold. Again, that's something you can access on the ASU brand guide as well. So once I get everything set where I want it to be, it's kind of time to start looking at the size of the text, how it looks together. I really want to leave the minor details towards the end. I really just want to get my typography down, because if your typography won't work in black and white, it will not work in color probably. So what I'm going to do is I'm picturing this as "we're in this together" being across the whole square. And as you can see, there's a little square inside the square, and that's just my margins. I set up margins so we're not putting things too close to the edge, because it just won't look as nice. You really want to give enough room for the information to breathe and to be seen and not overwhelming your audience. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on my text box, and I'm gonna pull the side of the text box all the way to the edge of this. And this will make it really easy because I'm gonna double tap in my text box. I'm gonna highlight it, and I'm gonna come up here to my text size. And I'm just gonna bump that up as much as it takes to get across the whole entire board. So it looks like 83 is gonna be around the size. So I look at this and I think that looks fine for now, but I think that this text down here is just a little small compared to the title. So I'm just gonna bump that up a little bit. Like before, I'm gonna pull the text box all the way to the margin so we're keeping it consistent. So I'm gonna highlight everything, and I'm going to change this maybe to 36, maybe a little higher at 40. I think that looks good. So this is a good time where I would look in my preview mode and look at it and see how I felt, and I think it looks good. Something I noticed is that I think these almost are a little too close together, so I'm just gonna bring this down a little. And these are all things that you learn just by continuously making these things. If you don't see them at first, that's totally fine, but as more and more as you make these things, you'll understand why things shouldn't be so close together and such. So we're going to go back to our text, and this is a very tiny design thing, but you're gonna highlight it again, and you're gonna see all these options up here. And a lot of them we're not gonna touch, we're not gonna mess with, but one we're definitely gonna mess with is this right here. This is gonna be your kerning. So kerning in typography is the spacing in between the letters. And it's set to metrics right now, which just means that InDesign has figured out mathematically in between the letters. So we don't really want that because sometimes it just doesn't look the best. So we're gonna just change it to optical. And then we're just gonna do the same exact thing to the bottom as well. Now, as you can see, this has kind of changed the size of our type. It made it almost a little more squished together. So that's when I would go back and highlight it and just bump up the type size to where it fit. And as you can see, it's a little too big, but I do like this type size. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna make the text box a little bigger. So just like before, you're gonna take one of the edges, and in order to keep it centered, you're just gonna hold Alt when you drag it, and it's gonna drag it out and make it just a little bigger on both sides. This one doesn't need much editing because it kind of stayed the same. So as we see in this is pretty good, close to done. It could be time now that we can start plugging in colors and seeing what looks best. So if you weren't really sure, you could always just test around. There's always room to just play around and see what everything would look like on your InDesign file. There's really no wrong way to do this. So I'm gonna start by putting, let's just say maroon in for now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get the rectangle tool up here, and I'm just gonna make a rectangle that is around the size of our box. So the rectangle's there, even though you can't really see it, but you can see this outer boundary of it. And you're gonna use your eyedropper tool right here, and you're just going to click the color you want. And just for the sake, I put all the ASU colors on the side here, just so they're easily accessible. I do this with a lot of my projects, just so I don't have to go back and constantly enter in the codes for the colors. This just makes it easiest. So when I click that, obviously we have a problem, and this is in the front. So very easy to fix. You're just gonna go up to Object at the top, Arrange, and Send to Back, because it is our background. And right now, it looks okay, but you just don't really wanna put black text on the maroon background. It's just not gonna do the type justice. You can't see it as well as you could maybe in a different combination. So One combination that I really am fond of, that I use a lot, is a black background with light text. So you're either going to do a dark background with light text or a light background with dark text. So I'm going to make it black just for the sake of this. And obviously we can't really tell how that looks because everything is black. So what you're going to do is you're going to double click in your text box, highlight it, go back to your eyedropper tool, and make it white. And you're going to do the same thing with the other text boxes as well. So right now I'm going to go back into preview mode just to see what this looks like. And I like the way this looks. I think the black looks good. I think the white looks good, but I do think there is room to emphasize some of the text in this post. Since it all looks the same, it's the same color, we know that the bigger text is emphasized, but within the post, we want to emphasize more text. So there's many different ways you can emphasize text. You can underline it, you can make it bold, but in this case, we're just going to change the color of the words that we want to emphasize. And the words in this case, we're going to emphasize together. So I'm going to highlight just together, take my eyedropper tool, and make it gold. And I like the way that looks. I think it gives it kind of a highlighted effect. You really see the together. And the other thing that I want to emphasize is the website down here, so your audience knows that that's where they're supposed to go. And in this case, you wouldn't necessarily want to overwhelm your audience in your post with so much text. You kind of just want to make it your summary post. If you had a bunch of more information to put in it, I would recommend putting that in the description of the post, or saying there's a link in my bio that you can go to in your description. I wouldn't recommend putting a bunch of stuff on your post. Just keep it as simple as possible. So this is time again, I would put it in preview mode. As you're gonna see, I'd like to go back and forth in preview mode just to see. And I think it looks pretty good so far. So lastly, we have to put our ASU Sunburst logo. So these are the two main logos that I like to use, this white ASU logo and the maroon as well. And I'll just show you just to see. If we put the maroon in here, it looks okay, I think, but again, we're then putting maroon on a dark background. And if you have to use this logo, then it's fine. But since we have other options, just such as the white logo, it's best for us if we just put that to stick with the whole theme. So it's really important that we don't want to just slap the logo right here and call it a day and it be done. We really want to think about where we're putting this logo and make sure it's aligned with everything else in the post. So I want to make sure that this ASU logo is going to be aligned with the edge of our period and the bottom of this text. So a really easy way I do this is I make a rectangle and I just drag it down from the end of that period, and I make it like any color that's other than the background. So I'm just going to make it gold. So that's where I know it needs to go against, but I need to know also the bottom where I want it to go. So you can just copy it, Command C, and then Command V, and here's your other rectangle, and I'm gonna just turn it to the side. So you'll see that there's different options. You can make it bigger, or it's gonna give you this kind of bent arrow, and that's where you can turn it to where you would like. And in order to get a perfect 90-degree angle, you just are gonna press Shift, and it's gonna do it for you. So I know it once I want it to be at the bottom of these letters, and I'm gonna drag it out just so they kind of just make a nice corner that I can then grab this with my selection tool and put it in there. And I'm moving this around with my keyboard right now, but you could also do it with your mouse or whatever you feel comfortable with. So I think that looks good right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these two rectangles. So you can go through and delete one at a time, or this is just easy to know. You can click one, hold Shift, and it'll click the other and delete them both at the same time. That's just nice when you have a lot of things that you need to delete and you don't want to do it one by one. So again, I look at this and I'm like, okay, it looks good. Is there anything else I can do? This may actually be aligned with our text, but I just see that this is looking a little too high. So even though it might exactly be aligned, you kind of have to optically align it to where it may not actually be aligned, but it looks aligned. So I think I'm gonna just move this down a little. And I think that looks a lot better. And those are just, again, little tiny things that you'll get the more you go. So I look at this, exit preview mode, and I think, is there anything else I can do to this post to help it visually? So one thing that I'm noticing that I don't really like is that I don't really like how the shirt of this person is blending in to the background. But I do like the photo and I don't want to change it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little small rectangle underneath to separate the photo from the content. So again, you're going to go with your rectangle tool. You can zoom in, which you can either do command and your plus sign, or if you have a laptop, just the basic kind of zoom in motion. And you're just going to make a small rectangle. We can always fix it after. I would try and make it even on both sides, but again, you can always fix it afterwards. This is just to see. And I'm going to use my eyedropper tool and I'm going to make it gold. And it doesn't really matter that we have this extra information on the side here, because InDesign just knows when it saves out, it's only going to save what is on your artboard. So I look at that and I think that looks pretty good. I like the way it looks. So I'm gonna do just a quick overview and make sure everything looks good. And one thing that I usually find these things at the very end that I wanna fix is that I feel the content as a whole is just a little too high. We have all this space at the bottom and we're kind of close up here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to hold down my mouse and just drag it across all the content. So if you were to first do this and say you moved it up, we're not moving it up, you would take the background. So I'm going to Command Z, that's undo, and I'm going to just click on the background and just make sure you're not clicking on the content. This is just taking away the background, so it's not going to move that. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit with my keyboard, just a little, and kind of do it to where I feel it's even. So I feel that that's pretty even. So again, I look over it, just make sure there's no typos. I don't see any right now or anything like that. And this is when I would go through and I would save it and send it back to whoever was asking for it for reviews or edits that they personally would want. So the way that you would save this would just be File, and I would export it. And then I would just export it to my desktop as a JPEG. And it'll show up on your desktop and, and it'll go to your desktop and then you can send it off. So let's see, that is what it's going to be for the social media post. So InDesign, like I said, is just going to be best for your social media post, for a lot of text, photography kind of put together. And the reason why we're working at such a big size, at 15 inches by 15 inches, is because it's just best to scale it down to make sure you're getting the best quality. You wouldn't want to do an actual Instagram size square. It just would be best in the end to make it bigger and scale it down later. And if you really wanted to see what it looked like scaled down, you could just zoom out a lot and it would kind of show you what it looks like. So that is for our social media post.